WikiLeaks has released thousands of pages describing how the CIA has broken into smartphones and computers, among other things. Should we be concerned by the agency's activities? The UK is facing a fine of nearly €2 billion from Brussels for failing to crack down on ultra-cheap imports of Chinese goods. Could this in any way be linked to the start of the Brexit negotiations? And as sex education in China is being put under the mass media microscope, just how much should we be telling our kids and when? Welcome to The Point. I'm Li Xin. WikiLeaks has released thousands of documents describing sophisticated software tools and techniques used by the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, to break into smartphones, computers, and even internet-connected televisions. And this led to an aggressive attack on WikiLeaks from Donald Trump's administration. According to the document, we're now fully exposed. Our digital devices can be a monitor on us. This reminds me of George Orwell's novel 1984, in which everything with screens in our homes is potentially watching us. Is this story becoming fact? Does the CIA have the right to spy on people around the world? To get more insight, I'm joined by Schober from New York, an American wireless cybersecurity expert who is also CEO of Berkeley Veritronic System, and Xu Qingduo, a current affairs commentator. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Mr. Schober, let me come to you first. Is what I describe in the novel becoming reality for us?
Yes, it is a reality now, especially after these recent revelations that WikiLeaks puts out there about the CIA and their capabilities. I think especially alarming to myself and many others too, when we think about our television sets, our smart TVs. Everything nowadays is connected on the internet. We hear of the Internet of Things, and consumers have this appetite to plug everything into the internet, remote monitor and connect and download. That advanced capability that we now all appreciate and enjoy for convenience of things can actually be used against us. So if the CIA wanted to listen in or spy on us, they could certainly do that without us even realizing it. And that to me was a big revelation. Now, reality is the CIA watching everybody and listening in from our smart devices and smart TVs? No, it's unlikely. It's the fact that they have the capability to do that is what is so concerning, because that kind of steps over into the privacy issue. Rather, what are they really doing with that capability? It's probably targeted individuals that they need to spy on and gain information. That's the difference.
Yeah. Some people are saying, they're saying that, look, as you said, the CIA is not going to watch everybody around the world. What they're doing, or what they're aiming to do, is to guarantee security or safety for American citizens. So in case you have some suspicious conversation or information, you can trace that person down so that it doesn't inflict harm on the United States. Does that justify what the CIA is potentially doing here?
Well, no, I don't think so. That's probably stepping over.
Yes, go ahead if you want, Mr. Schober.
I was just going to say briefly, I'm sorry, it seems like they're stepping over when they're saying that. So, no, that's not the case. That's beyond the limits there, the capability that they're going to be exploiting and taking on. And in addition, it's sharing that information, the hacking techniques, not just within the government agencies, but more important, the hacking community. That's where now that information is out. That's the bigger concern. They can't control the hackers. So when the hackers have access to this information, which they now do, it's very dangerous for everybody globally.
Qingduo, tell us, how concerned are you about this incident, both on a technical and legal sense and on a political sense?
Well, I think there is a distinction for people living inside the United States and people living, say, in Beijing or Moscow. People living in the United States, probably the concern is really about privacy, whether there is invasion from the government agencies into our own personal privacy. But for people living, especially governments and national leaders of other countries, as we know from 2013 Snowden case, that like even you are national leaders of Germany, Brazil, Indonesia, your personal phone can be listened in on, and also your email box can be hacked into. That's not an issue about the legal or beyond legitimacy. It's really about the national security issue. It's more serious, I would say.
Well, at this moment, people have the impression that, it's no news anymore. I mean, we have heard about it. The NSA, it's outrageous what the US is able to do out there, but still, we seem to be getting used to something that is already becoming norms here. Mr. Schober, is that where we're going? I mean, is there any turning point potentially in sight for the privacy or the rights of people in other parts of the world be screened from this kind of violation from the United States?
Yeah, you make a great point. In my opinion, I think what's happened, especially in America and probably other countries too, many people have traded convenience for privacy and security and vice versa. So they'll opt oftentimes to be convenient to use a device or free email or whatever the case may be, and they give up this perceived privacy and security. In reality, we really don't have the privacy that we believe we have. And after the revelations from Snowden, what do we notice? There's been a big push on end-to-end encryption, especially on smartphone devices. And many people have gravitated toward WhatsApp with well over 1 billion users, or Signal, or other messaging apps. One that I use is Squeal Lock. So it's got end-to-end encryption, and it makes it very difficult for somebody to eavesdrop on that conversation. There were some misreports that saying that they can hack into it and bypass the encryption. It was not exactly true. It was a little bit misreported. They can place malware, malicious software, on smartphones, and what they could do is place what's called a keylogger, and every keystroke that you type in on your smartphone or your mobile device, it could record that. And that's how they could actually get the content. They were really not breaking any encryption or bypassing it from that standpoint. So you could use something as simple as an anti-keylogger to protect every keystroke, and that will help certainly there to protect your privacy.
It's really unbelievable still, aside from the technical convenience that our lives can be looked into like that. Also, I mean, the United States has been accusing China or Russia as being the biggest hackers in the world, constantly making big stories out of it. But at this moment, it turns out that the CIA is the biggest hacker in the world. Qingduo, what is your comment on that?
Well, this is in a sense, interesting, ironic. The United States has been, as you said, criticizing China, Russia, and other countries for hacking into U.S. computers or other companies, either government agencies. But the things like, there's accusation against Russia for intervening in the U.S. election or hacking into computers or email box. But so far, there's little evidence, hard evidence, to support that accusation. But what we see here is obviously the CIA. I mean, again, revelation after the 2013 Snowden case, now revelation of their hacking methods and the collection basically of those methods and the ways to invade in the personal privacy, and also against obviously other governments and other probably like civilian institutes, like what happened, as we know, universities in China and also headquarters of Huawei technology was invaded and hacked by CIA.
I think this is a very interesting phenomenon because basically a lot of people in the United States is saying that the fact that Donald Trump was able to be elected the president of the United States is largely because of the leaked information as a result of hacking into the emails of the Democratic National Convention. But now, after this WikiLeaks story broke, the White House has a different attitude. Let's hear what the White House spokesman Sean Spicer said the other day at a news briefing, that Trump administration is extremely concerned with the WikiLeaks story, that they intend to be tough on leakers. Anybody who leaks classified information will be held to the highest degree of law. Spicer also emphasized that the one leaked classified information should be held to law. How about the one who practiced that? That is my question. How about the one who practiced the hacking? I mean, shouldn't we be asking the question whether the US has the right to do all of that instead of accusing the people not to leak this information? Gentlemen.
Well, I think, of course, when Donald Trump talked about leakage, in a sense, he talked about the leakage from his government to the media. We know there is an ongoing war between Donald Trump administration and the U.S. media. So that's where the term comes from, so-called deep state. Some Obama administration holdout officials somehow leaked the message, information to the media. That's what he called the deep state. The problem over there, the leakage. He's very annoyed by the leakage, the practice over there. And when it comes to the CIA practice, as I said, within the United States is a different matter from the issue concerned other countries, obviously. So I think for other governments and also people living outside the United States, people probably should raise awareness and do whatever they can to protect themselves.
Finally, Mr. Schober, the FBI Director James Comey warned Wednesday that the Americans should not have expectations of absolute privacy. How do you view this?
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's still a perception. We do not have clear privacy and clear security here in America, although we can take personal steps to minimize that we're being spied on. As crazy as it sounds, you could cover up your camera on your smartphone, on your laptop. These are steps that we can take to give us some level of privacy, but we really should think before we type something, before we text something, and use end-to-end encryption where we can. These things are available, and it minimizes the amount of information that we put out there that might compromise our security. And it's good, too, that with yesterday, they talked about WikiLeaks is now going to share some of the information with technology companies, the vulnerabilities, and I think that's extremely important, so Apple and Google and Microsoft and other companies can make sure that these vulnerabilities are patched so hackers will not further exploit these.
But again, we have a formidable enemy, that is the government of the United States, who has the most strong security, technological advantage in the cyberspace. That's a big topic. We're not going to go into there. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Mr. Scott Schober joining us from New York.
Thank you.
And Qing Duo joining us here in the... So, the Trump administration and the mainstream media in the United States, I think, are missing the point. They are criticizing WikiLeaks for publishing documents without asking what the government is doing to citizens around the world, who gave them the right to spy on whomever they want simply because they can. The whole issue smacks of hypocrisy and double standards. It seems very much a case of don't do as I do, do as I say. Right now, we cannot do much about it, but what about 50 years in the future? If we don't start challenging what are becoming the accepted norms, we'll always be relying on the likes of WikiLeaks to find out what is really happening to us. Britain risks a nearly €2 billion bill from Brussels for failing to crack down on criminal gangs flooding Europe with ultra-cheap Chinese goods. The EU's anti-fraud office, known as OLAF, conducted an investigation from 2014 to 2016. It concluded that British customs played a central role by repeatedly ignoring warnings to take action over Chinese textiles and footwear pouring into the EU at a tiny fraction of their cost of production. What is happening to the China-EU trade market? Considering the timing on the eve of Britain's negotiations to leave the EU, what's the potential implication of this incident? Will it reflect a strategy of killing two birds with one stone? For more insight, I'm joined by Louis Dalmau, an expert on EU affairs from Brussels. Mr. Dalmau, thank you for joining us. First of all, what do we know about this investigation at this moment? For instance, do we know who are the criminal gang, the criminal network that have committed these fraud?
Well, yeah, thank you for having me. The investigation is right now, has been offering some of the information. It's been said that this is a fraud network, that it's not just it's not just bringing the products from China to the EU through the UK, but it also has a network all over the EU that actually is able to bring the products from the UK to every country in the EU and then sell them to the customers and European citizens.
Mm-hmm. It seems that this issue has been going on for a while. We know the investigation started 2013 and the investigation wrapped up 2016. Why do you think the result is coming out now? Is there something behind the timing of the release of the result?
Well, there could be a few reasons behind the timing. First of all, probably is because this investigation has been going on, as you said, for a few years. And France, which is one of the countries that has been leading these investigations with the EU authorities, has been asking the UK to stop these practices. However, the UK hasn't done it. So making this investigation public now is a way to add pressure to the UK to stop such practices. At the same time, we cannot forget that this month of March, the UK is going to start leaving the EU because Theresa May, the PM of the UK, is going to trigger Article 50, and the Brexit is going to start now. So it's not the perfect timing for this regarding European and UK relations.
Do you see this as an isolated incident of cracking down on individual fraudsters or a network of organized crimes? Or do you see it as the kind of problematic relationship the EU is continuing to feel towards growing economic relations with China?
Well, I believe it could be both from my point of view, and after the investigation it came out, the investigation actually said that the EU has lost a lot of money not collecting the taxes that it's supposed to be. So from my perspective, this could probably be a criminal organization that has been benefiting from these products being sold with lower taxes. But of course, we know the background. We know that the EU has done has had, and the EU and China have had difficult relations regarding trade, as we've seen with steel or solar panels. So it would not be a surprise if this was another try by EU authorities. But at the same time, if the investigation is truthful, and I believe it is, the EU has lost money, a lot of euros in this situation.
Thank you very much, Louis Dalmal, joining us from Barcelona. You have been watching The Point. I'll be back right after this. The past 4 decades have seen dramatic changes in people's understanding of human sexuality and sexual behavior, from gender equality campaigns to the UNESCO International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education. It seems that we have achieved a lot in this field. But a mother from Hangzhou, a southern city in China, has questioned whether we are all moving too fast. A textbook used to teach sexual education to Chinese elementary school students aged 7 to 10 has come under fire after she complained in social media that it's too graphic and inappropriate for that age group. A groundbreaking textbook, Cherish Life, a sexual education textbook for elementary students, covers a variety of sex and relationship issues, including reproduction, sexual abuse, gender issues, homosexuality, and safe sex. While some people are celebrating the openness of this book, I'm left wondering how we can decide which information is age appropriate for today's children. I'm joined in the studio by 2 ladies, Professor Li Jingzhao from Beijing Foreign Studies University and Li Hongyan, the National Program Officer from UNESCO Beijing office, to talk about this very interesting issue. Welcome to the show, ladies. Now, Professor Li, let me come to you first. What do you think of this controversy, let's say, that we have seen so far? Some people are very much supporting it. They're thinking, you know, after such a long time of being very reluctant to teach our kids about sex, now China is really taking these very important steps. But other people are saying it's too much, it's too explicit. What do you think of it?
Well, I think this textbook is probably the best available textbook on sexuality education in China, or one of the top 3. I think there's a controversy because, first of all, there is this generation gap. Now, we think that the children at elementary school and middle school should have proper language to talk about sexuality and sexual culture. But most of the parents didn't receive any sexuality education
Yeah.
when they were elementary and high school students.
I understand that. I understand the need, absolutely. But I do understand the concern of the mother. For instance, this age group is very much in the spotlight, 7 to 10. Is it not
Right.
really too young? I mean, in different countries, we have similar controversy. Ms. Lee, what about you?
Yeah, firstly about the textbooks. Personally, I also think these books are really good. They are very relevant, very much needed, and of very good quality, I should say. Because they are developed in line with the national policies and also refer to the international technical guidance on sexuality education, which provides a basic framework on the objectives and the topics and learning objectives. Yeah, so it's a very good effort. But in terms of the age appropriate, to ensure the contents are age appropriate, that is a basic principle of the international technical guidance. So the topics that are under the controversy, basically they are included in the technical guidance. They're suggested by international technical guidance. So I don't think that's anything wrong to talk about those issues. Yeah.
But do you understand people's shock, people's
I do.
reaction? Why do you think they have this kind
I
of
do,
reaction?
as Professor Lee has said, because the parents, as parents, we lacked that kind of education during our childhood, and we also lack, the awareness about what sexuality education really means.
Right.
It does not just talk about sex, sexual
Right.
behavior, or sexual intercourse. Sexuality is a very comprehensive concept.
Yeah.
It covers not just the physical and the biological aspect, but also, most importantly, the social and emotional aspects.
And increasingly, as we are entering this new age, more and more children seem to be in need of sexual education instead of the opposite. I have some statistics here. For instance, a total of 443 cases of sexual violence against children under 14, involving 778 victims, were reported in 2016, according to an annual report released by the Beijing-based Girls Protection NGO. Now, sexual education is undoubtedly a crucial topic in China. What can be done to make this work better? I mean, shouldn't we have informed the parents a bit better, or give even the families choice? Maybe maybe some families think that the business of educating their kids about sex is a family business. What do you think? How do you react to that, Professor Lee?
Actually, based on my limited research, a lot of parents prefer the school taking over most of the responsibilities of educating their children in terms of sexuality because they feel embarrassed. They don't have proper training themselves in talking about these issues. And they think that, most parents think that experts, they have done a lot of research and they have done a lot of action-based research, so they know more than parents to talk about sensitive issues as sexuality. And there's also the information gap. If we don't have proper scientific language to talk about sexuality, then kids will go to the internet to look for very, very unscientific and unsupported information on sexuality.
Ms. Lee, do you think the families could be involved better? Maybe while we're talking to these young children, their parents should also be informed.
Definitely.
Yeah?
I think one of the major learnings from this recent controversy, the debate, is that parents do need a lot of education. And
More
it's a
than we
life
think.
learning.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And parents, once they are educated, they can become the best supporters for schools in providing the best education for the children. Yeah, so parents and schools should work in partnership. Yeah.
Now, there's a controversy in Switzerland, for instance, where people are concerned about the age. They think that the kids should not be exposed to sex education before the age of 10, for instance, and that some children should be given the choice of whether they want to go for this kind of education or not, because in some maybe not so much in China, but in some countries, the religious factor is also very important. In some families, how do you look at the sensitivity that this kind of education must have?
Well, sexuality education is not just about reproduction or how babies are born or conceived. It is about family relationship, healthy communication, how to protect your body, and how to have safe sex in the future. So I think it's closely related to gender. When kids are exposed to what is a man, what is a woman, it's not too early to talk about sexuality anymore.
Yeah.
These two should go hand in hand.
But after this incident, do you think the authority will give it some thoughts as to whether more detailed work could be looked into, for instance, so that we can make sure that the kids of younger age will not get access to the books of that are designed for kids of older age?
Yeah, I do think that schools can play a more proactive role in reaching out to parents, involve the parents in the discussions. And at the same time, I think people also need more awareness about, to more scientific information, more accurate evidence to help them understand that, those fears of keeping the children away from the topic of sex or sexuality is actually unfounded. There's a lot of research that shows that talking about sex and sexuality with children does not encourage them to have early sex.
Exactly.
That's already a lot of research done,
Right.
and people need to know about that.
And the parents need to know about
Exactly.
that,
Right.
so
Yes.
that they have more confidence in these education.
Right.
Thank you very much, ladies. We have to leave it there. And here is my last point. As we discussed, let's not forget that many of the parents of these children never received proper sex education themselves, me as one as well. So we only found out a lot about sex much later in our lives, and often in discreet, roundabout manners. So I can understand the shock the mother must have felt on finding out what her child was reading in school about sex. Personally, I think it is a great thing that kids are given this kind of education, and it's a big step forward in China's sex education. However, the local cultural and religious sensitivities need to be addressed. Only then can this kind of education get the support of the parents. That's all for this edition of The Point. See you next Monday at the same time. Thanks for watching.